What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the greatest show on the web. You know what it is, the turnaround. We are back in action, about to get back to it with the season 2018 NFL season. I cannot wait. As an Eagles fan, as a Super Bowl champion now, they can't take that off our resume. I'm even more excited to talk about football this year. It's going to be really dope, really exciting. I have a lot of things on deck for this season, so you got to stay tuned. But we're not going to talk about this today. The reason why I wanted to bring up a podcast today is that the third preseason games just ended, which means all the starters are done for preseason if they played. All the backups are going to be playing on the fourth preseason game. So this is the time now to do fantasy football and get that draft ready and get your team right so you can win some money. And that's why we're here today. And I think I have a bomber today. Yeah, I think I do. The bomber topic, I'm going to give you my 5, pillars of fantasy football that will make you have some of the best chances to win your league in just average Joe leagues. I have 5 pillars for you that if you follow these as consistently as possible through the season, you will have championship results, at least get in the championship game. Because, I've played fantasy football only 3 years, and I've followed these rules every year, and I've been in at least the championship game each year. I'm 1-1 right now. Try to go 2-1 this year. We'll see. And so we'll get into the 5 pillars, and then we'll just get into my beware list for some players in fantasy, and then, my considered list. You should consider list. So we'll get into that as well. And, we'll keep it, relatively short and sweet and to the point. Give you a couple of my fantasy tips, and hopefully you win some money, because I know I'm going to win some money again this year. I'm running to the bag. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 pillars. The turnaround, baby. We're back. Okay, like I said, Art Turner's 5 pillars for championship caliber fantasy teams. So I'm going to go through the list, and then I'm going to explain each pillar and break it down to you on why I feel this way. All right. So pillar number 1, go with what you know. That's pillar number 1. Go with what you know. Number 2, 2 elite quarterbacks pay off long term in the long run. Having 2 elite quarterbacks on your fantasy team does pay off in the playoffs. 3, you can't get an elite if you can't get an elite running back in the first 10 to 15 picks, and I'm talking about elite running backs in the first 10 to 15 picks, just wait. Don't reach. Number 4, always add sweeteners to trades. I like to say expendable players, not throwaways, but players that you would be okay without. Always throw those in the deal, those type of players in the deal, to beef up your trade packages. And number 5, don't get married to every player you draft. You have to be able to maneuver. You have to be able to be flexible. You have to be able to see opportunity when you see it, take a good deal when you see it. Don't get too caught up into your pride because you drafted a player. You have to be able to be mobile. All right, so those are the 5 pillars I have. Once again, go with what you know. 2 elite quarterbacks pay off. If you can't get an elite QB, can't get elite running back in the first 10 to 15 picks, wait on it. Throw in expendable players to beef up trade packages, appealing look. And then don't get married to the players that you draft. All right, so those are the 5 pillars, and I'm gonna explain my reasoning and why you should follow these. I'm gonna have to break that down, and I'm gonna hopefully bring examples of 2018 and what you should be seeing. Okay, so the first pillar, go with what you know. So this is what it is. In a world of uncertainty, you have to pick players that have shown consistent patterns of producing. Don't go for the players that you know nothing about, like of them having success in fantasy, you know? So, like, why are you selecting unproven talent with high upside over steady producers that you've seen? You're overthinking the whole draft process. All right. So, for example, you're going into this season. Think about me. Just think about it for a second. For example, in this 2018 draft, right? If you're going to pick a Browns wide receiver first, you have to pick Jarvis Landry over Josh Gordon, or or Jarvis Landry over any crazy talented wide receiver that you haven't seen anything from. Jarvis Landry has produced in fantasy, and with Tyrod Taylor, I can see him having another good year. I don't know if it's going to be as good of a year as he had last year with Miami, but if you just had the inkling and you wanted one of the Browns players, go with what you know. Recently that Jarvis Landry has produced fantasy-wise. You don't know what you're going to get from Josh Gordon. You can't tell me, he did this in 2013. That was 5 years ago. So don't get overzealous about that. Go with what you know. Another example is, and this is probably the last year you can say this about this running back, but if it gets down to it, and plus he produced last year as well. So don't overthink this either. If it came down to it, you have to pick Mark Ingram over Saquon Barkley. Saquon looks like, the next flashy running back that can do it all, catch it out the backfield in that offense with Eli Manning, Odell. He's going to get his touches. And you have to realize that, Ingram, he's going to be out for 4 games as well. But don't overthink it. Mark Ingram's still a good running back. And even though he's missing 4 games, I'm still picking him ahead of Saquon Barkley. Not that I don't think, Saquon's going to be nice eventually. He is. But you have to go with what you know. Saquon has not proven it on this level. Not yet. Preseason doesn't count. Mark Ingram has. He's been consistently one of the best running backs in the league for the past, 5 to 6 years. Fantasy as well. He's been solid. So don't overthink it. Go with what you know. That's pillar 1. All right, so pillar 2. 2 elite QBs pay off in the playoffs. Long term. They pay off in the playoffs. And here's my reasoning for that, all right? QB on paper is not the most valuable position. That's the running back. But you can't tell me any different. Well, let me retract. You have to look at how the NFL works as well. They say if you don't have a quarterback, most likely you're not going to be successful. You have to build around the quarterback. If you have a quarterback, you have a shot. If you want to have a long-term dynasty, you have to have a quarterback. You have to have that same mindset for fantasy. Now, I'm not saying, you pick Aaron Rodgers with your very first pick, if you're number one, you have to go with the best value pick at that. But what I'm saying is don't wait too late to get a top caliber elite QB because you're playing the numbers game. And hear me out on this, because I did this last year and it worked. I had both MVPs I think we were in a 12-person league, right? In a 12-person league, I had essentially both MVPs on my team. Carson Wentz and Tom Brady. Both elite stats. All right. And you're like, whoa, you're wasting a roster spot. Yeah, I'm wasting a roster spot because I'm starting Tom Brady mostly. So I'm just wasting Carson Wentz's elite talent, putting up numbers. But guess who else is not getting those stats? My opponents. Instead of them having Carson Wentz, they have Alex Smith. They have Joe Flacco. And you don't know what you're going to get out of them. So let's not undervalue the importance of an elite quarterback on your team, because you have to have consistent play out of your quarterback every week if you want to be a deep playoff team. I'm sorry. The quarterback points are pretty easy to get in most leagues. And if you can get a dude that can give you about 20 a game, 20 plus a game at the elite level, you're solid. You're very solid. And if you have a second player on the bench, a second quarterback on the bench that's of the same caliber, that's putting up stats, and you want to interchange, that's good. But guess who else is not getting those points because he's on your bench? The other team. You got to think long term. You got to think long term if you want to win. So just think about that. So 3, as I said before, if you're not getting an elite running back in the first 10 to 15 picks, just wait. So if you're not getting David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, LaShawn McCoy, just wait. Don't reach on, trying to get Alvin Kamara early. Don't reach on trying to get Christian McCaffrey. Don't reach. All right. If you can't get an elite caliber running back in the top 10 to 15, use those picks to good use for somewhere else, because I'm telling you, you can patch together a decent running back committee. You can patch it together. You can't patch up crappy quarterback play. I'm sorry, you can't. But you can patch up crappy running back play, because there's not a lot of running backs, right? And so the cats that have one are good, but out of those good running backs, only a couple have really good years. It's the numbers game. So everybody's in the same boat. And if everybody's in the same boat, you get lucky with a couple picks on the waiver wire, right? So again, just wait on the running backs. But, obviously, if you have David Johnson, I'm still taking David Johnson number 1. I'm probably still taking Le'Veon Bell number 2 or 3. Zeke the same. Gurley, I'm going to get into that a little bit later about the Rams. But, those type of LaShawn McCoy, I would probably still pick up early as well. But if I'm not getting those brand names, I'm cool. I'll wait. I'll get Joe Schmo. I'll pick up. And then, or, I'll see where McCaffrey or Kamara land. But I'm not going to overshoot for him. No way. And number 4, always make it seem that the other person's winning the deal, even if he's not winning the deal. Throw the sweetener picks in there. Throw the players that are expendable on your team in there just to make it look good. If it's a real two-person trade, a two-player trade, two for two players, just throw the extra tight end on top to make it 3 for 2. Just give them options. Because it looks better. They're getting more. I get it. Smart fantasy players would know, like, essentially the deal is this. I get that. But the optics are the optics. And the optics says they're getting 3 for 2. That's better than 2 for 2. So just keep that in mind. Always sweeten the pot. It comes back in good karma fantasy-wise. I'm telling you, sweeten it. And number 5, which I'm telling you a lot of people have issues with, is don't get attached to every player that you draft. All right? Not every player is going to pan out like you think it's going to be in your head. That's okay. It's part of the game. Example for me, 2 years ago, it was DeAndre Hopkins for the Texans, right? I drafted him. I drafted him 7th overall. He didn't do squat all year because Osweiler was his quarterback. And obviously, there's rules of dumping your first rounder, but I was ready to dump him because I didn't I was ready to trade him for something. Just don't feel like you have to stick with a player because you drafted him. Be willing to take opportunities, to take risks. Because usually production in fantasy fluctuates and you just want to catch waves. You want to catch when cats are on the upswing. So, if your players are on the upswing in the first part of the season, they're probably going to have a lull in the second part of the season. So you just got to, keep that in mind. And, if players are kind of having a lull that are pretty good in the first part of the season, then get them up in the second part of the season because they might just kick it up, So you got to think about that. Just don't get caught up in the box. Just keep being mobile, keep being fluid, keep your eyes open, and then you'll be fine. And so those are the explanations I have from Art Turner's 5 pillars of championship success in fantasy football. I'm telling you, if you use these pillars, these lessons, I don't even know, if you use them, these tips, you will have a successful fantasy football season. I promise you, you'll have a successful season. So that's it for the 5 pillars. I do have another part of the fantasy football segment today as well. It's just a couple of my thoughts, the beware list and the consider list, and then we do these 2 lists and we get out of here and we enjoy the rest of our Friday, Fantasy Friday. And so here's my beware list, all right, for fantasy. These are the things that you should just beware. Rams skill position players, beware. Jared Goff, Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, and I think that's all of them. You would expect to have them have another breakout year like they did last year, but don't expect Brandon Cooks having a crazy year because I don't know how well he fits in that scheme. In the last couple of years, I like Brandon Cooks and he's a good player, but fantasy wise, he's going to give you like 3 or 4 major games, but then after that, it's kind of just on a low ceiling because he's kind of like a boom or bust player. Like either he gets his yards or he doesn't. He's not as consistent as I would like him to be. Again, he's a great player. And then again with the offense, I get it. Sean McVay, Jared Goff, but year 2 in a system is good for quarterback and coach. But year 2 of tape on them is good for defenses too. So they won't be able to do the same exact things they were doing last year. I don't know the whole process, but I'm pretty sure Goff was getting the plays right before the walkies, the microphones in their helmets got cut off. So he's kind of just getting fed the plays after Sean McVay sees the defense. Now, I'm guessing they are working on him making better reads and stuff like that. But, I mean, how much better? I mean, Carson Wentz was already reading plays, his rookie year. And, Jared Goff is in, year 2, and he's still getting, fed plays. So I'm not saying he's a dumb dude, but maybe his learning curve is not as fast as an elite quarterback should be. So he might have a down year, which I'm expecting. Todd Gurley is the best bet. Again, he's a top caliber pick, top 10 pick for sure. But, I mean, just beware, because even though he's going to get a lot of usage, I just think that their offense will get figured out just a little bit more this year, and they just won't have the breakout year they had last year. So just beware the Rams skill players. Also, beware of Deshaun Watson. I like him a lot. He's going to be a good quarterback, but don't base what you saw the numbers you saw him put up last year off what he will do this year. He will have a significant drop. Those numbers he was putting up last year were historic. They're crazy. Don't expect that again. You don't see that in the league like this that often, especially with young quarterbacks. Not saying he can't have success, but 3-4 touchdown a game success for a month straight in the league. You know how tough that is? So, just beware. Don't don't draft Deshaun Watson higher than he should be drafted. All right. Honestly, there's a lot of quarterbacks I'm picking before Deshaun Watson. Not trying to be a knock. I'm just saying, if you're thinking what you saw from him last year is going to be in the ballpark similar, I don't think it will be. I think he comes back down to earth as a second-year quarterback. So we'll see. And then beware. I'm a Tom Brady fan. Even though I'm an Eagles fan, I like Tom Brady. He's the GOAT, and things on those lines. But beware that his numbers might not be as elite as they have been the past few years. I think this is the first year in a while where you can consider, maybe I go a different route if I can't get Rodgers. Maybe I go a different route. Maybe Brady's not the option. Just you think about that. You still might need to take Brady. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying beware. Because I think his numbers drop this year, especially with the turmoil in New England and things like that. I think his numbers drop. He'll still ball out, but the elite numbers, I don't know. I think I may stay away from Brady this year. We'll see. But I might stay away. Like I brought up earlier in the podcast, don't draft Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara too high. I need to see more from McCaffrey. I don't even know if they're using him as a 3-down back, or they're using him as, a Swiss Army knife in the slot. In that offense, I just don't see it with Cam Newton. He's a great talent, but Cam Newton has never really orchestrated an offense that I think Christian McCaffrey would, excel in. They'll try to give him the rock. They'll try to get him the rock. Most definitely, he'll get his touches. But I don't know if their scheme and with the abilities of Cam as an orchestrator of offensive, aerial attack. I don't think his numbers are going to be as good as what they're projected to be and what people think. So I think, they're one of those situations where you can just wait, chill out, let things settle. And if one of them, kind of fall back, then you're going to be fine. Same thing with Alvin Kamara. Great talent. He's a baller. But don't expect anything that he was doing last year. It just doesn't happen in the league. It doesn't. Not saying it's not possible, but I haven't seen it yet. There's patterns that said it hasn't happened yet. So just don't overdraft him. He's not a top 10 to 15. Don't do it. Do not. I'm trying to tell you, do not do it. For McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara, do not. And so let's get to my consider list, and then we'll get out of here. So my consider list, Jimmy Graham over Travis Kelce. Aaron Rodgers is going to be seeing Jimmy Graham a lot this year. A lot. With Aaron Rodgers' arm talent, Jimmy Graham's talent in the red zone, dude, those back shoulder passes, those passes on the run that Aaron Rodgers is going to give this man, Jimmy Graham might have a career year. He might have a career year. And I'm talking maybe surpassing some numbers he had in New Orleans. I think his red zone numbers are going to be pretty outstanding. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to feed him the rock. I just do. So I would pick Jimmy Graham over Travis Kelce because I still got to see Mahomes in the regular season. I'm possibly, just consider it. Andrew Luck, you take him as your second elite quarterback. So you kind of gamble and take him high enough where your catcher like, oh, what are you doing? I don't think he plays as well as the first part of the season, but you stash him, right? He gets it under him, and then he starts putting up numbers. And then people start hitting your line. Oh, what do you want for Andrew Luck? And then you have trade value. Just consider it. Consider taking Marcus Goodwin earlier because you don't want to miss out. Consider it. If you're kind of about to go into the middle of the draft, but kind of still like some good talent on the board, take him. And if he's still there, I think he's a top 30 pick. I think you want to get him in around the 20, 25 range, the late 20 range. Because if you go out, past the 30 pick range, you might be missing out on a really good receiver, especially with Jimmy G. He likes him too. He goes his way, especially off last year. So you got to look for Marcus Goodwin relatively early in draft day. You got to think Michael Thomas early as well. New Orleans, they always produce offensively. Michael Thomas looks like a legit number one receiver for Drew Brees. He's going to see him. So you have to think about trying to snag him up earlier than later. And then, like I said earlier, I'm probably taking, if I have the number one pick, I'm probably taking David Johnson again. He had a wrist injury last year. It wasn't like lower extremities at all or anything like that. So his legs should be really fresh. He's still versatile. You have Josh Rosen there learning, so he has to get the rock. He's going to have a high usage rate. So I think you have to take David Johnson again. I took him last year. Obviously, couldn't really use him. I still won my league. Just think if he can stay healthy and where I'd be. So that's all I have for the Fantasy Football Friday, the Turnaround Podcast. I like doing this with you guys. I don't always bring out just the flashy numbers, analytics. This is more of the average Joe of, watching the game and looking at a couple stats. Not necessarily a deep dive in analytics, but I think I know enough of the game to, talk football and talk fantasy because, I'm like everybody else. So thank you guys for listening to the podcast, The Turnaround. There's more content going to be coming in the future, a lot more updates, data productions, dreams are tangible, aspirations. My name is Art. You guys have a good rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you back soon.